Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Geico. SEC Media Days kicking off today from Nashville. LSU getting things started with head coach Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly and the Tigers overachieving in his first year as head coach there in Baton Rouge. LSU going 10-4 on the season, winning the SEC West. You see the recap here of 2022. They reached the SEC championship game. That was the second time in the past 11 years. They also beat Purdue in the Citrus Bowl, putting up the most points in Citrus Bowl history, 63 points there. Brian Kelly alongside our Josh Plate from SEC Media Days. Let's take a listen.
LSU head coach Brian Kelly rolls into Nashville, Tennessee all of a sudden for SEC Media Days. You've been on vacation, so I assume that went well.
Oh, it went great.
Yeah.
I made it back last night, so that was the only, if there was going to be a hitch, that was going to be it, so we're all ready to go.
So we sat in a room in a different city this time last year, and people were throwing around the F word, which of course is fit. And everyone was trying to school me on what kind of fit you were in Louisiana around LSU, and a lot of people were of the opinion that there wasn't a fit.
Right.
Some of us disagreed. You kind of blocked it out, went about casually winning the SEC West, and now a year later no one talks about that anymore.
Right.
So what has that whole process been like of shutting people up? Your goal is to win games.
Right.
It just so happens you shut people up in the process,
Right.
and so now a year later, different set of questions. Now it's all of a sudden, can the guy make the playoff? Forget about fit. Can the guy make the playoff? What's that transition been like?
Well, I think it's natural into year two that you have higher expectations. So they know that this football team has improved. We took over a team that had 39 scholarships, and we got to the SEC West Championship. Now, that's not enough. That's not the standard at LSU. But that next step is getting to the playoffs and giving this team an opportunity to win a championship. So I like the expectations. That's why I came down here from the very beginning. It was to be challenged by the best, and I believe that the best is in the SEC.
When you came in, I remember you talking about having to implement your culture, which a lot of coaches talk about.
Sure.
Sometimes it's a bigger uphill battle, job to job. I always equate it to like getting on an on-ramp on the interstate. It takes a little while to get up to speed. Yeah. And once you're up to speed, you still got to drive, you still got to maneuver, but at least you're going as fast as everyone else. Yeah. Can you please take fans as much as you can through the process of organization building? Because you're not there just because it's week one of year one. You're still kind of feeling things out, implementing your way. Do you feel like you're up to speed now, and how long does that really take?
Well, I would say that from an organizational standpoint, we have got a strong foundation, but you're still building. And I don't know that anybody ever stops building, but for us, we've got the right people in the right places that touch the players on a day-to-day basis. We've created a high-performance environment in a very short period of time with the right people. Now we need to continue to build on that. The resources are outstanding at LSU. It was one of the draws that got me there. But we have to continue to build on those things within our program. Look, we're looking for consistency from our players on a day-to-day basis, and we're looking for that in our program. We've only done this once, and we need to do it over and over and over again, like Alabama, like Georgia. Those teams are consistent. We're not consistent yet. That's the next stage for us.
I think a lot of times fans watch games. They know you study film of games, you study film of opponents. The whole process of self-scouting. Probably during your bye week, you do it a lot during the season, but then after the season, you're assessing everything from your recruiting staff to your assistant coaches. But when you look in the mirror, number one, how do you assess yourself? And number two, what kind of outside voices do you use to get feedback on yourself?
Well, number one, we have a number of ways for us to look internally at what we're doing week to week. We don't wait till the end of the year. I think you have to be able to check yourself from week to week. And I think that has changed things for me over the last 10 years, is that I don't have to wait till a bye week to kind of get that information. We can do it from week to week. I think as we look at us from a larger, 35,000 feet, how I'm doing my job on a day-to-day basis, I look towards my directors and my leaders within the program and get feedback from them. Look, if they can't weigh in on things like that, they'll never truly buy in. So giving them the opportunity to have those discussions on the things that I can do better or need to do better, that's when you have a cohesive, collaborative organization working together.
It's preview magazine season. So there's a nice entire synopsis of what you need to do on one page in a magazine. But when you look at your organization, you look at your team, everything's a work in progress. But there always seem to be one or two real pivot points on a team. And it's going to go north or south based on this and this. As basic or as broad as you can be, what are a couple of those pivot points on the LSU team?
Well, let's assume we take injuries out of this,
Yep.
right? Because everybody's got to deal with injuries. If no injuries are part of this, we're going to have to solidify the back end of our defense at the cornerback and safety position, which is going to allow us to be better at getting off the field on third down. We were not very good at getting off the field. We're going to have to do that. We saw that later in the year where we kind of tailed off a little bit defensively against A&M and again against Georgia. If we're better there and we continue to play with a physicality up front with our offensive line, then this football team is going to be in a good position. If we struggle running the football, if we struggle with physicality up front, and we can't get off the field again on third down, this football team is not going to have the same kind of success. So we know where the areas are, and of course that's where we went to work in the offseason.
You guys have embraced the portal. There are differing philosophies out there. It's pretty obvious what yours is, and you're talking about the back end of the defense. And we're in an era where you just have the luxury afforded to you to do things in terms of talent acquisition you could not have done 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I think there's always this misnomer from an outsider's perspective when we're approaching a season. Oh, those coaches know what they have in there. I can't wait to find out what they know. But even you're around these guys every day. How can you really know when you take that many guys out of a portal in that same position room, how can you ever really know what's coming?
You don't, and that's why there's still a red flag that flies over our program in a sense of if you really evaluate where we are, you would say that's too many guys to take out of the portal. And it was on defense. It wasn't on offense because we're ahead of where we are. But we're still a year away from a recruiting standpoint where it's player development with freshmen and developing your players from within and not having to take 12 guys out of the portal on defense. So if you're really looking at it carefully, it's a red flag because you don't know until you get out there whether Zay Alexander, who we took from Southeast Louisiana, is going to be the field corner that we expect him to be. Those are a number of the questions that we have going into the season.
When you look forward to the season, and then you juxtapose it to where you were last year, you obviously had expectation what competing in the SEC is going to be like. Then you experienced it. So how did the experience match the expectation?
I think it was probably a little bit more than I had thought in a sense that, you go on the road against Auburn. Auburn's having an average season. And that place is sold out. It is rocking. It's an incredible atmosphere. You go to the Swamp and you can't hear yourself think. I mean, going on the road in the SEC was an incredible, I think, eye-opening experience for me in terms of how you need to prepare your football team. It is difficult to win, period, in the SEC, but even more so on the road. So that was really good for me to see that because you got to take the appropriate measures to get your team ready for those tough games.
I'll get you out of here on this. You can go 30 minutes or 3 minutes. I wouldn't advise 30, but when you look
at producers, I
saw a bunch of nods of heads. When you've been a head coach over 30 years, which just is a wild stat,
right?
And you haven't taken a year off. You've just done it over 30 years consecutive. Go back to your 7th year in, your 9th year in. If that guy could see Brian Kelly circa 2023, how different are those people? And like which areas, which compartments specifically have you altered the most?
I would say probably my relationships with the players. I was a play caller, virtually my entire career. So if you can think of the day, right? The day is set up where you're in meetings most of the day. You don't get a chance to see the kids go through the performance center and in the weight room, in the training room, because you're locked up in meetings. Now I get a chance to be with those players. And so that connection with your team is so much different than it was when I was a play caller and being involved in meetings all day. So I enjoy it more. I feel like I'm more energized because of it, because we're all in it for the same reasons. We're in it because we love the relationships with our players, and getting that in the back end of my career has been really amazing.
Brian Kelly, nice enough to come off vacation to visit us in Nashville. We appreciate it, man.
Thanks. Good having me.
All right, thanks so much, Josh. Sitting down with Brian Kelly. We have Dennis Dodd and Josh Plate. They're going to be in Nashville. We're going to be checking in with them from SEC Media Days all week. I can attest to what he said, though, Tommy, about the SEC on the road, the swamp. It really is.
Just means more. Loud there.
It's louder than most, too. All right, getting a look at the schedule. You got LSU, Missouri, Texas A&M up first. The next day, we got Auburn, the defending champs, and Georgia, Mississippi State, and Vandy. July 19th, Bama, Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky. And then finishing up media days on July 20th with Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Tennessee.